Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the first event of the 2025 Freestyle Chess Grand Slam Tour. I'm here in Weissenhaus, Germany, and today and tomorrow the players are playing for 7th and 8th place, 5th and 6th place, 3rd and 4th place, and 1st and 2nd place. Every single place is winning a certain amount of prize money and a certain amount of points for the circuit tour, which will last the entire season. Today we had some really interesting announcements. First of all, Hans Niemann has been given one of the wildcard spots for the next event in Paris, France. He does not even need to qualify. That's very, very exciting. And Hans has been talking about being uninvited from tournaments and not getting tournament invitations. So this is a really, really big deal. But also, Vincent Keymer has secured a spot for the next tournament as well by becoming one of the finalists. And today he will play for either $140,000 or $200,000, and his opponent is Fabiano Caruana. Magnus Carlsen is playing against Javahir Sindarov. You can book it there, 103 in the video. Levy mentions his boyfriend, as you guys like to say. I see you in the comment section, you absolute children, you rascals. We've also got Hikaru, and he is taking on Nodirbek Abdusattorov. They are playing for 5th and 6th, and Gukesh is playing against Ali Reza Firouzja. Those are your matchups. Here we go. And, oh, my neck is stiff, and I have been sitting for the entire day. And, this is very exciting stuff. Wait, before I get into the games, folks, on Chessly, we have just launched streaks. Log into Chessly, get some work done, move up the leaderboard. Speaking of which, we've got leaderboards on the way. We have new courses on the way on Chessly. It's going to be fantastic. And also soon we will offer a more robust integration of your online chess games that you are playing, where we will give you feedback. Imagine you play a game and you're able to see how well you did based on the opening that you are studying. Super exciting stuff. I can't wait to share all of that with you. And like 300,000 of you watch these. I know for a fact 300,000 of you are not trying to improve your chess. And that's okay. But I'm just letting you know that you can, and it's a really nice experience. Here we go. First game we're going to look at is the game in the finals. Then we are going to look at Sindarov versus Magnus Carlsen. You are going to have to behave yourself because Magnus Carlsen is not the first game that I will cover in today's recap, because he is not one of the top. All right. This is the opening. It's freestyle chess. They drew a position. And Vincent Keymer opens with the move c4. Okay? That's a very interesting move. Very provocative move. The point is that the queen and the bishop are staring over in this direction. And he identified correctly that this is a very tender part of the board because the rooks are kind of pointed that way. Black can castle short, black can also castle long. In fact, both sides could actually castle on the very first move. Knight f6, the move Fabiano chooses, and now knight to f3. And b6. What's interesting is that Vincent actually correctly identified this is a very dangerous position for black. Because white obviously has the option to strike first, and it will target the integrity of your position. Moves like knight g5, knight f7 almost look like checkmate. It's actually kind of a miracle the knight is defending, but if that knight were to move, then that square would be extremely tender. Like right now, playing the move knight g6 would just straight up get you into a very bad position because of the move knight g5, and there is no easy way to defend this pawn other than going back and losing this one, which is sort of hilarious. Obviously, that's not going to happen. So b6, Vincent takes some space with b4. Fabiano plays c5, right? Trying to get an exchange and this. Now, if you watched the recap yesterday, you know that Vincent Keymer finished this game relatively quickly, and Fabiano Caruana actually played a 7-hour marathon match against Javahir Sindarov. So there is a question of whose energy is higher, who is feeling better, and now Vincent forces the issue already. Now, by the way, look at the clocks. This is why people like to watch recap content and struggle sometimes to watch live chess. Doesn't matter if it's classical chess, doesn't matter if it's freestyle. The players start the game with 1:30 on the clock. But after just 3 moves, they spent a collective 1 hour. Live chess is hard. It's a hard thing to sell. I'm not going to lie. If I wasn't commentating this event, it'd be a little tough, right? Because especially in the opening phase of freestyle. Now, that is the way you get the ultimate form of the game. And after bishop e5, this is only a move you can come to after 30 minutes of thought. Vincent is attacking the queen, trying to make Fabiano block, and then he's going to take and grab a pawn. The best move for Fabi is actually to come forward and not get into all of that, because you're going to see Vincent gets rid of the position and he takes the pawn. And what Vincent is doing here is he's gambiting this. Now, for now, the knight is under attack. So now Vincent has the possibility to play this move b5. But he actually comes up with a very nice move, and the move is e3. And the reason why this move is so fascinating, and the position that we get here is so relevant to Vincent Keymer, is because of this. So if you open up an analysis board and look at, some of these moves, like this one, this one, this one, this one, Vincent Keymer, when he plays with the white pieces, he likes to play the ready. And there is actually an opening in the ready, a gambit. My mouse has been a bit strange recently. There is this gambit where black, takes and then takes. And this is kind of similar, not exactly similar, to what we see on this board, right? And that's really fascinating. So Vincent has kind of found an overlap in an opening that he would play from traditional chess. Maybe he was never thinking about that, but that was the first thing that I thought of, because he's an expert in the ready system. Now, bishop e2 is the move chosen. Knight g3 is probably next. Maybe you're going to castle your king over here. And honestly, visually speaking, white's next moves are very nice, and black is not going to be able to castle his king. This pawn is in the way of the bishop and the queen. The bishop is stuck protecting the pawn, and already, even though the computer is only saying plus 0.2, I think on a higher depth, it will really appreciate how difficult this position is for black. And Fabi's next move here did not do him any favors. He played the move rook c5. And the thing about the move rook c5, and this was talked about during the broadcast and afterward, this is not a move that you play if you think your position is okay. The point of this move is to come here. Another point of this move is to maybe generate some counterplay against the c-pawn with moves like d5 or maybe b5. Overall, it's a move that you're desperately trying to create counterplay, because you sort of sense that white is going to move the knight there and then go here or here. We have knight g3, we have queen c7, Vincent goes here, defenses, and he did everything that we said. He took the center, he brought his knights out, he defended his weak pawn, and he castled his king. And Fabiano continued with his plan, but it's too slow. But it's too slow for a reason that a good player may or may not play, but a player in the type of form that Vincent is in this tournament will absolutely play. And that move is h4. A flank pawn attack, pushing a pawn where you've castled your king, supported by the knight and the queen, and in the long run, this pawn will ruin the black position. White is menacing on the right side of the board, but has no fatal plan just yet. But all of a sudden, absolutely does. And I think at this point, Fabiano realized, and he spent 17 minutes on his next move trying to kind of dislodge the coordination of the white position, he realized he was in dire straits. This is a 12-move victory for Vincent Keymer. All he has to do is put the finishing icing on the cake. The rook slides back to c1. Fabiano tries to create quick counterplay. Here comes h5, and now perhaps the biggest decision. Do you shred open the position with the move c5, sacrificing a pawn but opening up all the lines to the opponent's king? Or do you play what Vincent plays in the game, which was the top computer choice? It's a very engine move, d5. Improving the position of your knight, going to d4, but also suffocating the black pieces. They cannot move at all. Knight goes to d4. Rook goes to a1, trading off the only active piece. And now after h6, Fabiano's position is collapsing on all three sides of the board. He gives up a rook for the knight. He tries to create a little bit of counterplay. But ladies and gentlemen, you are looking at arguably the best freestyle chess player in the world. Vincent Keymer has won his first game against Alireza Firouzja, Magnus Carlsen, and Fabiano Caruana. This man is about to complete one of the most unbelievable runs in a knockout tournament ever. And the way that he's playing, the way that he is understanding these positions, he's also starting to go more into the confession booth, okay? Where he's sharing his thoughts privately, but they're going out to the live audience during the game. I have not much else to add. Fabiano Caruana had to fight back with a late deficit against Javikir Sindarov. He is no stranger to overcoming tough challenges, and tomorrow he has a chance to do the unthinkable, which is beat the man who has not lost a game in the knockout. Vincent Keymer is on another level. I don't even know what to say. He is playing unbelievable chess, just spectacular level. He is reaching a spectacular level of the game. Now, Magnus Carlsen, Javikir Sindarov. This is a matchup for the 3rd place and 4th place spot. And it started quite interesting. It was very different. There was no c4 played here, and Sindarov played a4, which the computer really doesn't like, but actually is a move that the humans liked. Magnus thought that the move a4 made sense. The computer kind of hates it. It thinks that after b6, black is doing very well. There's an attack on the center here, and if white plays knight g3, you play knight g4. And apparently you just have a very nice position. Tough for me to understand. You then reposition your knight to the h6 square, and then, I mean, even if you let the engine run on a higher depth, it doesn't actually find anything particularly advantageous. So it just goes to show you, like, game review is game review. But if you let game review think for like 20 minutes, it might come up with a very different type of thing. And in this game, it was Javikir who had a big space advantage. He had a very nice position, and Magnus gave him a pawn. Like, queen takes f7 is just a free pawn. Now, it's obviously not just a free pawn, but it's just a free pawn. The point was that probably there would be very quick counterplay created on the queen side with B, C, or even D pawns. Maybe you would even play rook e7 targeting the queen. The queen doesn't feel particularly comfortable on the f7 square. But here Sindarov played a move which really confused us in the commentary booth, and that was rook b1. Rook b1 was a strange move. It seemed like Sindarov was trying to defend his pawn on b4 and maybe target this and maybe advance. He probably thought that Magnus was going to castle his king this way, and then he would have some form of an attack. Magnus played d5, which was a move that we liked. It was defending the center. Again, don't pay attention to these symbols that game review is spitting out, right? Knight g3 and long castle. So this is your position. It's a very, very tense position. And Sindarov plays bishop d3, takes, puts his knight on f4. Here I was really considering bishop f1. I didn't think this was this bad of a move. I thought after knight takes e4, rook takes e4, black will play f6, you will play g3. You'll probably develop your light squared bishop, let's say to the h3 square. That's what I thought, and then the king goes to b8. But what I had failed to realize was that the king actually has to stay in the center. I thought during the game that you can actually castle, but you've moved your rook, so that's obviously impossible. And the computer doesn't hate it, but Javikir tries to do things a little bit differently. He does it like this, and then he plays g3, knight d5, and he castles his king. But let me tell you something right now. Light squares are weak. And Magnus grabs a pawn. He's like, Javikir, I see why you put the queen and the rook there. But I'm not going to lie, buddy. I just don't believe you. I just don't believe you. Sindarov tries to lash out in the center of the board, trying to make Magnus pay for his wrongdoings, saying, I don't think you get it, old man. I'm going to be attacking you now. But Magnus strikes right back. Now the white d-pawn has to make a decision, and we see the early makings of a monstrous counterattack on this diagonal. You got a bishop in the corner of the board. For one guy, it's cursed. For Javikir, attacking nothing. For the other guy, it's going to be a monstrous piece. DE, beautiful move b6, and now Magnus, just like a surgeon, puts on his face mask. All right? Puts on his doctor's outfit. What are they called? What are they called? Scrubs? Is that what nurses and doctors wear? And then he goes here, operating on the battery. Then he comes here. This is a very nice move. Tucking the king away on a8 from any sort of diagonal attack. Plays c4. Queen here. Beautiful move. a5, the final piece of the puzzle. Black is a pawn down. But Magnus senses that once he gets the bishop activated, all his pieces are going to come in and white's position is going to absolutely fall apart. And this is extremely high-level understanding. It cannot be understated. This is very, very high-level stuff Magnus is showing us. The king just hides, completely safe, snuggling next to the bishop and the pawn. Queen side is sealed. You don't feel like white is a pawn up. You feel like white is desperately clinging on for defense. Here comes the bishop, and here comes knight takes c2, and the official falling apart of the white position. If you take with the queen, the rook comes in on d3. It attacks the knight. It targets the bishop. You can't defend everything. You will sacrifice the rook and checkmate white. And this is the dagger. That's a fork of the queen and the bishop. You have to take it. Magnus picks up a rook. He's come in. He's taken what's his. In with the rook as well. Queen d5. That's it. Jawakhir Sindarov resigns. You know, Vincent Keymer talked about it in his post-game interview. He said, a match between Sindarov and Fabiano, which went really, really long, and Sindarov ultimately lost, will take more out of Sindarov. It's very hard to play a 7-hour match that you lose. When you play a 7-hour match and you win, it rejuvenates you. Obviously, that didn't particularly help, as Keymer played a fantastic game, but Jawakhir Sindarov goes down. Magnus Carlsen back in form after losing to Vincent Keymer. So Jawakhir has to strike back. Fabiano has to strike back. Nodirbek Abdusattorov versus Hikaru Nakamura was also a game that was very strange. It took a crazy turn as early as move 3, as the engine here found the same concept that Vincent played against Fabiano. But this time, it would have led to the following position with bishop b5, rook e7, queen b2, bishop g7, knight g3, a 4 sequence of moves that could have put Hikaru on a severe back foot. But maybe Nodirbek didn't see an exact way forward here, and ultimately he was not so scared about this. But he goes e5, and Hikaru played knight h5, which was absolutely radical, and then played f5. And this resembles the Rossolimo very much. I mean, there's a lot of positions in the Sicilian where black plays in a very strange way like this. It also resembles positions that Hikaru has played with the black pieces before. And Hikaru gives away his light-squared bishop in this game to damage Nodirbek's pawn structure, understanding the dynamics of the position quite well. Ultimately, it was a very weird game, but a queenless middle game arose. And of all the positions that were on display here in the first day of the finals, this one was the most peculiar because, here Nodirbek had offered here Hikaru offered a draw. And Nodirbek declined. So, Hikaru was completely fine here repeating moves. He understood the position was equal. And then he was like, okay, you want to beat me. Let's go. Now, actually, what's funny is the first move out of the repetition, Hikaru makes a slight inaccuracy and gives Nodirbek some good chances. But Nodirbek has to prove it, 22 minutes to 43. These young guys are hungry. They have no respect for the old men. Nodirbek declining a repetition of moves, thinking that he's going to instead put pressure on Hikaru in this position. Hikaru giving up his bishop for the knight and playing horses versus bishops. Bishop sniping in the corner of the board, but Hikaru with 6 dark squared pawns, completely negating the dark squared bishop in the bottom left-hand side, right? Mobilizing his forces, but still playing defense. I mean, it's still imbalanced enough of a game that if Nodirbek overestimates his position, he will get himself into some trouble. But ultimately, I mean, there is not much you can do here. Hikaru dancing with his knights and grabs a pawn. I mean, what's funny about this position is, Nodirbek could have defended himself. He could have put the bishop on e4. But he had such a bloodlust to prove a point against Hikaru in this 5th and 6th place match that he straight up gave him a pawn. Hikaru was like, what? And bishop c6 was just absolutely the wrong approach. Nodirbek tried to break down Hikaru here. And Hikaru was like, okay, I mean, I'm going to take what I can get. He comes back and ultimately tries to stabilize. And Nodirbek might just not be convinced that Hikaru can convert this position. But for God's sake, he's Hikaru. And even though the position is quite complicated, king g7, king f6, very complicated game. Ultimately, Nodirbek losing yet another pawn, and it's just 2 pawns down in an endgame. Nodirbek played with fire in this game and simply got burned. I wouldn't even say Hikaru won this game. That's not a criticism. But Nodirbek just did not want to draw. Anything but a draw. I mean, there was a draw offered, there was a draw repetition earlier in the game. And then here, for reasons I completely cannot fathom, he gave away a pawn. Now, maybe he didn't like knight h5. Maybe he looked at this position and was like, well, I'm going to lose a pawn anyway. I mean, of course, this is very unpleasant in terms of an endgame. Maybe he saw that he was just, but there is g4, and there is knight f4 check, right? And then king c2. And even if you allow the knights fully into the position, I mean, there is no reason to lose a pawn. Even if your position is very unpleasant, here white is just sitting there. So Notjerbek just kept fighting Hikaru, and Hikaru was like, listen, young man, when I was your age, Hikaru wins. And he's now a draw away from getting 5th place, which is really not that bad. He's going to win a bunch of money. He's going to win $50,000. And he's going to win circuit points. So great job from him. Good composure, just didn't panic at all, you know. And that takes me to my final game of the day. This one was unbelievable. So Firouzja has clearly a strategy of playing as fast as possible. And let me tell you something, it paid off because he was much better already early in the game. And Gukesh, early in the game, was down, 30 minutes on the clock. Like, Alireza was playing at lightning pace and putting a lot of pressure on Gukesh. But Gukesh is not obviously going to get bullied and did what, any normal person would do, which is obtain a completely winning position. Completely winning. But because he was already down 37 minutes on the clock, he rushed. He took with a rook. What's crazy about this position is black is winning if he takes with a pawn. Why? Because you open up the d file, and in a move, what you do is you deflect the queen and you castle. And this is completely winning for black. White cannot get the safety. White cannot castle the king. It would be illegal. And if white castles this way, white will get mated. So Firouzja's a bit of in a tilt mode. I mean, he's playing very, very fast. He's putting a lot of clock pressure on his opponents, but it's evident that he's just a little bit mentally done with the event. And that makes sense. I mean, it happens. He was obviously not so happy with how he played against Vincent, but clearly nobody is particularly thrilled with playing Vincent in this tournament. And overall, then something completely just unbelievable happened. So look at this. In this position, Gukesh has 17 minutes on the clock. Alireza has an hour and 6 minutes. A 50-minute time advantage. Gukesh gives a check. So, in this position, bishop c6 was played. Bishop went here, bishop check, bishop here. This is a draw. This is a draw. I'm not even saying it because it's 0-0-0. When a guy like Alireza is shuffling the bishop back and forth, and you are shuffling your bishop on the same diagonal back and forth, it's a draw. There is no further way that black can put pressure here on white's position. We've seen Gukesh. We've seen him in the World Championship. We've seen him in the last tiebreaker game of Tata Steel play on a position where he might not need to. And here he did. And David Howell was not happy to see this on the live broadcast, and he was like, listen, you got to know when to repeat. By the way, this is an absolutely breathtaking queen sacrifice that was caught. But, I mean, it's not that breathtaking, because if Alireza takes, he gets mated, and if he doesn't take, Gukesh just ends up in a worse position. 7 minutes to 54, and I predicted that this knight is going to get to d5. Like, again, these young guys sometimes, especially Gukesh, he loves to play. He doesn't just want to repeat the position. But I predicted that in the long run, this would be a nightmare, no pun intended, for black. And so what happened over the next hour and a half? Even without completely flawless play, the knight made it to d5, and this is misery for black. The knight is a god. Now it's just about how quickly or how slowly you will break apart the black position. Gukesh is trying. He has 2 minutes to 21. Alireza walks all the way into his position, now just has to bring his rook, and Gukesh is doing his best. He is defending himself. Alireza has to find a way to break through. Like, maybe he has to play e4. Maybe he has to go rook h6 at the right moment, try to take this pawn, right, on f6. He just can't lose this one and allow counterplay. Firouzja's trying. He's looking, rook h5, now king g6 back. Now, here, there is a winning idea. It is rook h7 check, and rook a7, rotating the rook to the other side. It's +3. Now rook takes a3. Now he's a pawn up. Everything has spun out of control completely. Rook b2, okay, just a waiting move. a4, maybe not the best. King g7 was better, attacking the rook and then making progress. a5. And at this point, you got to take with the pawn, right? And knight e7 here is winning because you create the threat of knight c6 followed by rook b6 mate. Knight e7, knight c6 is completely winning because you completely dominate black's king, and then you just win the game. This is not a bad move. Gukesh tries to trade, and Firouzja, with 7:44 to a minute 48, trades into a drawn endgame. He just assumed this was winning. It's not. It's not winning. Why? Because you never win the second pawn. And this is a draw. Alireza is the most unlucky player in this tournament. Like, I feel like he has had so many interesting fighting games, but he is never able to convert them in the end. And this is just a draw. You will never win the second pawn, because in trying to win the second pawn, you will lose this one. Alireza probably thought he's just winning all the pawns. He's not. Which is just devastating. If this, here, it looks like a win, it's Zugzwang. It's a Zugzwang. King here, king here. You can't make any progress. This is probably what Alireza missed. The fact that you can be 2 pawns up in this endgame and you can't make a move. You cannot move your knight because you lose the pawn and then the other pawn gets sacrificed. The bishop takes the other pawn. Just unbelievable. And Alireza did not have to take on f8. I mean, he could have, here, knight e7, knight c6 is winning. Probably has some other ideas as well. Absolutely crazy turn of events, which ultimately ends in a draw. So Firouzja does not get it done, despite putting tremendous amounts of pressure on Gukesh throughout the game. Absolutely wild, totally unexpected. Crazy result in the end. And there is a winner on every other board. So Hikaru leads his match for 5th place. Magnus leads his match for 3rd place. And Vincent Keymer leads the match. And tomorrow, a draw makes him the champion of the first event of the 2025 Freestyle Chess Grand Slam Tour. Folks, tomorrow's the last recap of this format. Then we will get back to our regularly scheduled programming. I look forward to making more instructional content for all of you and so on. Check out Streaks if you haven't already. And tomorrow, Freestyle Chess concludes. Get out of here.